Welcome gallery, staff, councillors to Richmond Valley Council's Ordinary Council meeting on the 19th of September 2023. I will open the meeting with acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continuing culture, connections to lands, their living culture, and their unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, could you read the prayer, please?
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our Richmond Valley community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. The next item on the agenda, item 3, is public access, and we have 2 requests this evening. The first one being from Mr Roger Bailey, item 14.1, Northern Rivers Livestock Exchange Future Options. Mr Bailey, could you come forward when you're ready, please, and welcome. There's only a couple of small rules about the timing. You'll get 5 minutes. At 4 minutes the bell will ring, and so when you're ready, welcome and carry on.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the opportunity tonight. I guess I'm speaking on behalf of the producers again. I'm here tonight to plead the case for one of casino's icons. The NRLX and Beef Week are at the centre of the connection between isolated rural families and the rest of our community. The allegations, which were largely unsubstantiated, of moral and ethical misconduct at the NRLX have damaged the beef capital brand. And for what? To push personal gripes and discredit legitimate stakeholder concerns. Some of the operational changes proposed out there are radical and a retrograde step in getting my cattle through the complex in good order. Technology can only go far. There is no, and I repeat, no substitute for the experience of a career cattleman. And I include women like our carrier Margaret in that class. I realise we have to move forward. If technology can be integrated cost effectively, I'll support that. The NRLX has comprehensively failed to make the case for the need to increase the total throughput charge by 63%. This will wipe 15 to 30% off our agents' margins. The increase will inevitably pass down to us vendors. It already is. The inference that agents have been profiting at the expense of ratepayers, and I quote, benefits which have been accrued by agents making livestock selling at the NRLX a very profitable business, unquote. Sounds a little bit Marxist to me. Maybe I make too much money. Maybe I'm next. Maybe 2026. Then we come to the most outrageous claim, that the NRLX, quote, continues to run at an operating deficit of $469,282 and an overall program is in deficit by $647,303. That each ratepayer is in effect subsidising its operation at $60 per year for each rateable product. This is clearly not the case. Most substantial local government programs have a bank account called the Restricted Assets Fund, containing cash and cash-based interest-bearing investments. As the name suggests, the fund's use is restricted to the named program. Funds are usually received from operational surpluses of commercial operations like the NRLX, and expenditure is for the benefit of the named program. The NRLX program is has one of these restricted access funds. It had a balance at the 30th of June 2023 of $574,945. Back as far as 2016, the account has been in surplus, albeit fluctuating to as low as around $141,000. Other programs like quarries, cemeteries and libraries with similar restricted accounts fluctuate too. They exist to support the named program as a bank account would. Funds are also protected, unable to be accessed by for any other purpose except by council resolution. I would venture to say that not a dollar of ratepayers' money has ever gone into that account that wasn't paid back. Richmond Valley Council's operational plan 23-24 has an interesting schedule on page 74, which estimates restricted asset fund balances out 4 years to June 2027. As with the NRLX account in previous years, the other 20 programs accounts show estimated balances that fluctuate, most with modest growth. The forward estimates for the NRLX fund differ. Its growth is extraordinary. In June 2023, as I said, 474,945. 12 months later, June 24, $1.083 million. A year later, $2.131 million. 2026, $3.438 million. And in 2027, a whopping $4.614 million is estimated to be in that account. What about the poor old poor old cocky who has to pay for that? The NRLX is not broke, it has money in the bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr Alan Berry on the same item, 14.1 Northern Rivers Livestock Exchange, future options. Mr Berry. No doubt you heard the time limits early.
Yep.
Thank you. When you're ready, please
I'll
start.
do me best. Thank you for your opportunity to address Council on the important issue of the Northern Rivers Livestock Exchange. Firstly, I appreciate your attendance at the public meeting on September 4th to discuss the closure of the NRLX. The one and only reason for calling the public meeting was to get the cattle back in the NRLX. I had hoped in the context of your mandate as councillors to represent the interest and aspirations of the community. By attending the meeting, you would understand the community's passion and sentiment regarding the closure of the NRLX. I also hoped you would consider the motions put forward with good faith in the hope of a positive resolution. I'm disappointed with the progress to date and particularly stunned by the recommendations which will be made tonight regarding the future of the NRLX by the General Manager. His recommendations failed to address the concerns of over 700 community members at the public meeting where a number of clearly worded motions were passed. These included that the NRLX be opened immediately under the previous licensing agreement until a long-term solution is negotiated. And while the General Manager acknowledged the impact of the NRLX closure on farming families and the wider community, his short-term solution is to persist with the controversial and confrontational 2023-26 agreement, which is already deemed unacceptable. This approach to this decision is making it unacceptable. The GM's recommendation fails to show a will to quickly open the NRLX. Number two, it is vital that the Richmond Valley Council form an NRLX advisory committee. Local producers, cattle carriers, agents and buyers are the local experts with decades of experience in handling and selling cattle. Their combined expertise would provide valuable ways to improve the efficiency and profitability of the NRLX. I believe if genuine consultation with these groups had occurred earlier, we would not be in this mess now. It is imperative that their views, particularly with the regard of industry standards of work health and safety, animal welfare and cattle movement, are heard. We had a time frame recommended 14 days of good faith negotiations. With no signs of the NRLX opening and the General Manager saying he's confused by the concerns of the agent on the strength of one meeting, demonstrates a lack of will and good faith to reach a conclusion. As presented by the motion, it is time for a mediator to be involved to help address this confusion, unravel the misinformation and work towards a positive outcome for the NRLX. But while this is happening, the NRLX needs to be open and the cattle sold under the old agreement with the agents. Tonight, the GM will offer a recommendation that Council proceeds to an open market tender process for a long-term lease of the NRLX. Its outrageous recommendation concerns beyond many levels. The NRLX is a community asset, although the Council believes it is a business owned and operated by Council. I believe the government grants were given to enhance the community and businesses. They were not given to line the pockets of the Council. The decision here will affect many stakeholders for decades to come. We owe it to our kids and their kids to get it right. All long-term decisions regarding the NRLX should involve an advisory group who adequately represents the community interests and aspirations. The effect of a tender process on operations, economic impacts and employment of local staff must be thoroughly investigated, and this knowledge shared with all stakeholders prior to embarking down this rabbit hole. The tender process would be better looked at in a working facility, so start selling under the old agreement immediately. The recommendation from the General Manager is preemptive and totally disrespects the expressed wishes of key stakeholders of local business, community and cattle industry. It lacks community consultation and goodwill, and it certainly does not have a passion to recommence selling immediately under the old agreement. I would also like to express my disappointment with the Facebook comment from a councillor who questions the validity of a public meeting. The over 700 attendees who gave up their personal time to attend the meeting have a stake in the NRLX and contribute to casino's economy, both directly and indirectly. And furthermore, there would be few residents in casino without links to casino beef industry in one level or another, and would want the best for the local solution for the NRLX. I hope the opinions expressed in Facebook comment does not reflect the view of all councillors. In conclusion, I have no doubt there are people in this room that are far smarter and better educated than myself, but I will guarantee you there is not one person in here that is more passionate about this community and its businesses than myself, and I want to see the right thing done here. So I implore you, let's get cattle back into the NRLX.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Our next item is item 4, apologies. And tonight, councillors, we have a request from Councillor Sam Cornish to attend on video. So I will move a motion that Council approves Councillor Sam Cornish's attendance via an audio-visual link at the 19th of September and 17th of October 2023 ordinary meetings due to being absent from the area with work commitments. Could I get a second of Councillor Morrissey? Any councillors want to speak on that? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Good evening, Councillor Cornish. Councillors, I now have a late mayoral minute that I've submitted. I will move that. Could I get a seconder, please?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillors, I will read this, and I'm going to need an extension of time. If someone could move that, that'd be accepted. Yeah, Councillor Morrissey. Yeah. Councillor Hayes. I just speak to that. I need to read the mayoral minute. There was some distributed out on the tables, but for the benefit of people who are at home watching this online or haven't got one of those copies in the gallery, I will read it. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. I'll move my recommendation first of the mayoral minute, Northern Rivers Livestock Exchange. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the mayoral minute, Northern Rivers Livestock Exchange, and 2, continues to work towards a long-term solution to ensure that the NRLX is financially sustainable and provides benefits to the whole community. Could I get a seconder, please?
Second.
Councillor Humphries. Councillors, the past 12 weeks have been divisive and distressing times in our community, as former tenants of the NRLX continue their dispute with Council over the terms of new licence agreements. Since the public meeting in Casino on the 4th of September 2023, many locals have contacted me and my fellow councillors to make it clear to us exactly what our community wants. They want our town to be respected again, and they want our council to get on with the business of leading flood recovery, fixing our roads and solving the housing crisis, rather than becoming embroiled in bitter disputes over who pays what at the cattle sale yards. Tonight I ask my fellow councillors and those in our community who are fed up with the situation of the past 3 months to finally draw a line in the sand. Later in this meeting, councillors will consider a comprehensive report on future reports for the NRLX that will provide a long-term solution for the facility. I firstly want to address the motions of the Casino public meeting through the mayoral minute. Over the past 12 weeks, there has been a lot of confusion over what this debate is all about. But it is really quite simple. On one side, we have a council who has acted in good faith to invest in the future of the NRLX, source the $15 million required to upgrade the facility and provide the expertise to lift our local sale yards to one of the best operations in the state. All this has occurred despite ongoing difficulties with safety compliance, animal welfare issues, and frequent disputes about fees and charges. This is not the first time this facility has seen sales suspended over a fee dispute. On the other side of this debate, we have a group of local businesses seeking to maximise their returns from the continued use of this facility. Throughout this dispute, they have made it clear in media statements that they want to pay less and retain delivery operations of the NRLX. In the middle of this tug-of-war, there are 10,000 Richmond Valley ratepayers who continue to subsidise the operating costs of this multi-million-dollar business to the equivalent of $60 for every rateable property each year. It's time for this to stop, and for those who benefit directly from the NRLX to pay their fair share. While much of the public comment over the past few months has focused on what council should or shouldn't be doing at the NRLX, it has missed the reality of what we have actually been doing, and that is getting on with the job we were elected to do. Over the past 12 weeks, this council has secured commitments and finalised government funding deeds for more than $26 million in flood mitigation works for our mid-Richmond communities, including replacing and raising the Tabulum bridges and fixing long-term issues at Dairy Flat and Thurles Canal that have kept communities isolated after floods. We have also completed a major new flood study for the Richmond Valley that will help to provide certainty on safe places for housing. We will adopt that study tonight. Completed a major upgrade of the casino swimming pool for the benefits of the whole community. Adopted a new plan that will deliver more than 2,000 new homes and jobs for the Richmond Valley over the next 20 years, and secured over $10 million in disaster relief funding to finally fix the major landslip at Norton's Gap. We will award that tender tonight. But all this seems to have been forgotten in the ongoing public debate over whether it should be cost 0.2% or $1 per head to sell a cow. Motions of the public meeting. The Casino public meeting call for council to disregard its new licence agreement and allow the stock and station agents to formally trade at the NRLX to walk back in under the old agreement and ultimately take control of the facility. I'm sure many people would like to dictate to their landlord how much they are prepared to pay in rent and which conditions of their lease they are willing to comply with. But that's not how it works in residential or commercial tenancies, particularly when the commercial facilities are managed by government. Governments, including local councils, cannot simply ignore their own policies and regulations to do special deals with private business at the exclusion of others. Everyone must be treated the same, with the same commercial opportunities for the use of a public facilities. Council's conducted a professional and transparent procurement process to award its new licence agreement for the NRLX. It advertised its proposed pricing structure twice, with 60 days for public comment. It negotiated in good faith on more than 7 occasions to resolve concerns with licence conditions, but all to no avail. Council introduced the new NRLX business plan and licence agreement because we knew that things had to change at this facility. We cannot turn a blind eye to ongoing safety and animal welfare concerns at the NRLX. This is a modern facility and everyone, including council, needs to work towards achieving the highest standards. Unfortunately, there have been serious incidents occurring at the NRLX, some requiring police or RSPCA involvement, and all in breach of a range of New South Wales legislation, animal welfare standards and requirements of the modern sale yards. None of these serious incidents involve council employees, and all of them have been documented, with some recorded at CCTV. New South Wales health and safety legislation is very clear that council, as the owner and operator of the NRLX, is responsible for safety at this facility. Apart from the serious risk of death or injury to workers, our members of the public, we also face potential prison sentences of up to 5 years and fines of up to $3.8 million for not upholding council's duty of care. Our community cannot take this risk. That is why council is changing operations at the NRLX and why we cannot compromise on this issue. What has occurred in the past will not be accepted in the future. I'm just going to pause there for a second and make a comment. Earlier this year, an incident occurred where a non-council worker required hospital attention due to not following work-safe guidelines. NRLX staff internally reported the incident, and subsequently the NRLX manager notified State Work New South Wales Safe Work. They attended the site and an improvement notice was issued, which reads, "The legal name of the person as Richmond Valley Council, not the employer of the injured worker. These incidents cannot be allowed to continue, as council carries all the risk and has no authority over non-council staff working at the NRLX, leaving Richmond Valley ratepayers vulnerable." In this regard, we will not accept the demands of motion 1 of the public meeting. Council has been attempting to negotiate in good faith and has received no details despite numerous requests. We cannot move forward when others are not prepared to do the same. Our meeting tonight will consider a way forward. Motion 2 will depend on the outcome of item 14.1 in this evening's agenda. Motion 3 includes the wording that for the next 14 days from this meeting, Richmond Valley Council and agents meet and negotiate in good faith to resolve this dispute. Following the community meeting, representatives of the agents continue to issue public statements that key components of the agreement were non-negotiable. How can negotiations in good faith be achieved in these circumstances? The recommendation also read, if after 90 days from the date of this meeting, the dispute has not been resolved, the matter be referred to the Minister for Local Government, the Minister for Small Business and the Ombudsman to arbitrate. Council has no concerns with this issue being referred to the Minister, the Ombudsman or other government oversight agencies, as we have been through an open and transparent process in line with government requirements. Motion 4 called for an extraordinary meeting of Council to resolve the issue. This is what we will be doing tonight, responding to the community's urgent call for resolution and deciding on the future management of this facility. Motion 5 and 6 of the public meeting seek to dictate to Council how it should run its business operations at the NRLX, to whom it should provide commercial benefit, what it should charge and whom it should employ. This appears to miss the essential point that Council is the owner and operator of this business. As such, it is responsible to all ratepayers for ensuring that NRLX achieves at least a break-even financial result, and at present it doesn't. It costs $2.6 million to operate this facility each year, to pay for wages, services and compliance requirements, pay off a loan and interest, and set money aside for maintenance and renewables, as we are required to do under government accounting standards. This business currently operates at a deficit, which means it is being subsidised by Richmond Valley ratepayers, many of whom do not use this service. Council cannot allow this to happen. We are required to ensure competitive neutrality in our business operations. That means no cross-subsidisation by the community. Having attended the recent casino public meeting with my fellow councillors and the General Manager, I found motion 6, that Richmond Valley Council cancel the contracts and or employment of management staff at the NRLX, the most personally disappointing of all. Throughout this dispute, we have seen continual personal abuse and defamatory comments about council staff who are simply doing the job they are employed to do, and doing it in an ethical and professional standard. I am immensely proud of all our council staff, particularly those at the NRLX. Council staff are part of our community, and they deserve our respect for the work they do every day and their willingness to stand side by side with our community in difficult times and natural disasters. During both fire and flood, the NRLX was a centralised safe haven for livestock, and the NRLX team led by example, working tirelessly with local land services and the Rural Crime Squad in the identification and return of livestock. Following the 2022 floods, the NRLX played a pivotal role in identifying, processing and returning in excess of 1,500 head, while a further 3,000 head had transited or used the facility and temporary housing following the floods events. How soon we forget the goodwill and service of others when commercial interests cloud the debate. On the evening of the community meeting, just as another comment, on the evening of the community meeting, Councillor Steve Morrissey was singled out. Personal attacks should never be allowed to occur if a meeting is run correctly and efficiently. Under local guidelines, councillors are not allowed to influence operational matters. Councillor Morrissey received a complaint regarding the NRLX. He responded, done everything required and allowed of him in his role as a councillor. Being singled out like this can take its toll, especially in front of a large crowd. This was encouraged by some people in the audience who I thought would have known better. On the other hand, it has also brought out the good and caring side of our community, as Councillor Steve has been buoyed by the many inquiries of his well-being by phone, in the street and at his workplace since the incident. I thank those people for their concerns towards him. On the same evening, I was called on to retract my previous statements in the media about animal welfare, biosecurity and OH&S breaches. At the NRLX, one of many issues I mentioned earlier, I would have thought the person who demanded that I retract my statement would have been aware of these issues or checked if they were false before asking me to do so. All the incidents in my comments have been recorded, some have police intervention and some catch it on CCTV. Are all factual, evidence-based, and I stand by my statements and will not be retracting them. Tonight, I ask my fellow councillors to join with me in bringing this stalemate to an end. The bitterness and accusations have gone on for far too long. It is time to move forward and find a solution that allows sales to return to the NRLX as soon as possible and secures its long-term future. Would any councillor like to comment on my mayoral minute. Councillor Hayes.
Just a bit of housekeeping. You said Tabulum Bridges, you meant the Tatham Bridges.
I'm sorry, that's not even in our council area. Apologies.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for
Councillor Humphries.
bringing out the motions separately. I think there was merit in dealing with the motions separately to the recommendation later in the agenda. Thank you also for your courage, and thank you for supporting the staff and Councillor Morrissey.
You might want to get your closer to
As a
yourself.
councillor, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Councillors, previously I had thought about answering those, the debate in the 14.1, but I did have a meeting last Thursday with some of the organisers of that public meeting, and I did give them the undertaking that they would be answered at tonight's meeting. Any other speakers? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Our next item is item 6 on page 6. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 15th of August 2023. Could I get a mover, please?
Move that way.
Councillor Humphries, seconder. Councillor McGillen. Any issues raised with the accuracy of the minutes? No, I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Item 7, matters arising out of the minutes.
Yeah,
Councillor Hayes.
I have one. Item 10.1, it was, we asked that the council writes to the Premier of New South Wales, Mr Chris Minns, MP, seeking further rate relief for the flood-affected residents across the Richmond Valley area for the 2023-24 financial year. I'm just wanting to know if that letter's been sent, and if it has, have we had a reply?
Mr General Manager.
Yes, thanks for the question, Councillor Hayes. The letter has been sent. We don't have a reply as yet. Hopefully that might have been something considered in the budget, New South Wales government budget, which was released today. So we'll follow that up. We may do that through our local member's office. He's quite good at following up on those sorts of issues, so we can raise that with Richie Williamson.
Thank you.
Any other matters arising? Item 8, declarations of interest. Any councillor got a declaration? Mr General Manager, have you received any?
No, I haven't received any.
Petitions nil, notice of motions nil. On page 8, we'll have my mayoral report. I'll move that. Seconder, please, Councillor Morrissey. Any questions? Getting out easy tonight. I'll put that in motion. All those in favour? Carried. Delegates' reports. We have one delegate report from the Rouse County Council on page 9. Move it. Councillor Humphries, I'll second. Questions? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 14, item 13, matters determined without debate. Has any councillors like to call an item?
14.1, please.
Any other items? I'll call 15.1 as it's a planning matter. Any other? So I need a motion, please, to adopt 16.1, 16.2, 16.3, 17.1, 17.2 and 17.3, is that correct? Can I get someone to move that, please? Councillor Morrissey, seconder. Councillor Deegan. Put that motion. All those in favour? We are now on page 15. 14.1, Councillor Hayes.
I'd like to move the recommendation as written, including all 6 dot points.
The recommendations, Gowrie, are on page 16. Seconder,
Second the motion.
Councillor Humphries. Councillor Hayes.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to attend the lectern to give my rundown on that item, please.
Feel free.
Thank you. I don't like talking with my back to people, so I'm going to do it from here tonight. Yeah. Tonight I'm speaking for the recommendation as written in the business paper in full support of all 6 points. I would like to thank the General Manager and his staff for the detailed report in today's business paper, and I believe it is a true and accurate reflection on the matter at hand. On Monday the 4th of September, I attended the meeting at the RSM Club that had been organised by members of the public, so the community had an opportunity to voice their concerns over the current situation at the NRLX. This meeting managed to partly summarise some misinformation that had been circulating for some time. This meeting resulted in motions being taken from the floor and they were passed on to Council. I believe that those notice of motions, sorry, can't read my own writing, were appropriately addressed tonight in the Merrill Minute. I've been a councillor since 2012. In my first 18 months on council, we brought up the history of the complex and the financial figures of the previous years. These figures have remained a prominent part of the agendas in our ordinary meetings, and they have never shown any great improvement in that time. I became very concerned that council could maintain ownership of an operational asset that was consistently performing in this way. I was educated further by a few of my fellow councillors of the time about the significance of the facility as they considered it to fill a role as a community facility, like swimming pools, parks and libraries. My assessment has always been that the NRLX cannot be classified as a community facility as it is located on operational land and should be classified as a council business operation, like our quarries. That was suggested in one of the presentations tonight, that it's like our quarries. And if it cannot pay its way, we need to consider council's ownership. Council has not afforded any other industry this kind of assistance by purchasing land, constructing and upgrading facilities and applying for grants and taking out ratepayer funded loans to maintain such a complex. From 2013 to 2016, I was all for selling the complex. I thought that this would be achieved, but in February 2016, a resolution of council which called for further consideration of retaining ownership and upgrading the complex was commenced. In May 2016, after gaining feedback from the community that the NRLX should remain council-owned and further independent analysis of the NRLX provided the following quotes: "It did not fit the role of a community facility, nor is it a viable council business in its current state. It does deliver significant economic benefits to the region at the expense of Richmond Valley Council ratepayers. The analysis also stated that these economic benefits can be achieved regardless of whoever owns or operates the facility. Following this, I believe that if we were to retain ownership, it should be leased. This was tabled but did not happen, and we went along with the process of financing and redeveloping the complex to what it is today. We've had 2 closures in that time. The first in 2017 after the adjustments to the fees and charges in the 2017-2018 revenue policy. This was to be the first important step to achieving improved financial results for the NRLX, to relieve the business of future reliance on ratepayers' funds. A study of other sale yards at the time made it clear NRLX fees remain far below industry standards. The second closure came this year after the adjustments to the fees and charges in the 2023-2024 revenue policy, which came into effect on the 1st of July this year. This was another important step to achieving important financial results for the NRLX and further attempt to relieve the business of further reliance on ratepayers' funds. A further study of other sale yards has made it clear that the NRLX fees will still remain below current industry standards. My role as a councillor is to get the best outcome I possibly can for my community. All this on board, the agent chose not to accept the new agreements and wanted to go back into the complex once again with the ratepayers picking up the deficit. Since the closure on the 1st of July, there has been public statements from council and from the auctioneers associations, a few misinformed letters, a handful of social media posts, a few I'll put my hand up for, and some last-ditch orchestrated emails from a few over the last 48 hours, and a late email today from the Auctioneers Association trying to discredit the General Manager by changing their mind on the 0.2% business usage fee, which to me is too little, too late. Some sections of the community have demanded that the new licence agreements be made public. This is not possible, and it is my opinion that those agreements, which have now lapsed, would have gone a long way to relieving all ratepayers from subsidising the operation of the complex and preventing the new fees from being passed on to vendors without their knowledge, giving them opportunity to seek a more competitive deal.
Councillor Hayes, if you've got a bit to go, that's fine. I just need a motion to extend your speaking time.
I've got 10 seconds.
Away you go.
Okay. If the NRLX was to continue under the old agreements, our rural ratepayers, who are also vendors at the NRLX, would be subject to possible passing on of these fees, as well as subsidising the NRLX through their rates. This would not be the same for vendors who reside outside the Richmond Valley Council area. And vendor fees would not have increased for 6 years, a 6-year period under the new licence agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Humphries?
The report, the General Manager's report, is comprehensive, but I would like to make a few comments, majority relating to the fees and the leasing option. Since becoming a councillor following the amalgamation in 2000, I have walked quite a distance along the path of persistence and resistance to change and ongoing disputes between council, whose responsibility is to run the council asset at a break-even or better financial result, and the agents who use the community-owned facility to run their own private businesses. The community has been cross-subsidising the operations at the sale yards for most of the time that I've been a councillor. I can understand why some residents might see that as an acceptable donation to the industry. However, since the inception of Richmond Valley Council, I'm not so sure that all ratepayers in the valley are keen to continue to forego services in exchange for the facility's losses when the projected loss to each ratepayer has been calculated as $60 per ratepayer. Council organised a public information session held at the Community Centre in May 2016. At the meeting, the outcomes of the comprehensive study commissioned by Council on the future of the facility included a presentation on the findings and the recommendations. They were shared with those in attendance, and Councillor Hayes did comment on a few of those. Others were that Council retain ownership and manage the facility, that Council move towards operating the business at break-even or better financial result, and that fee increases provide a return on investment and fully fund depreciation. A little over a year after that meeting, and noting the fee increases needed to provide a return on the investment and fully fund depreciation, Council's 2017 draft revenue policy was set to increase the agent's fee to $1 per head. Around the time of amalgamation in 2000, I believe that the agent's fee was something like 30 or 35 cents. With $1 per head on the table 17 years later, the agents refused to sign the selling permits. The facility closed for 2 weeks. Council resolved to reduce the fee to 50 cents per head. During that period, 2016-17, cattle were selling for an average price of $951 per head, and 17-18, $852 per head. In 2020, the fee increased to $1 per head. During that period, 2021, the average per head was $1,384. And in 21-22, the average was $1,701. During the 8 years following the 2016 meeting, the NRLX generated $862 million in cattle sales, with an average per head for 22-23 being $1,214 average per head. Council received its flat rate of $1. Agents, their percentage commission from the vendors, and hence Council's recent move to the percentage commission as per the structure used by the agents with their clients. With regards to animal welfare, a core reason for the upgrades of the NRLX was to ensure compliance with work, health and safety and improve animal welfare. Any treatment of animals outside the Australian animal welfare standards and guidelines should not be tolerated under any circumstance, and I fully support the employment of an animal welfare officer at the NRLX. Workplace health and safety. There is no room for negotiations around this. The requirements under the Work Health and Safety Act are specific. Failing to follow the rules places people in the way of injury and death. It is essential for Council to have the support of all users of the facility agree to accept the regulations. And you will note on page 21 the personal fines for employees, the General Manager and the Council. The Council's is $3.8 million and they include jail time. At the meeting in 2016, there was another option included in the strategic options analysis. And most likely it wasn't considered at the time, because who would have believed that a $15 million upgrade would have been achieved at the NRLX in such a short amount of time? Option 6 it was, $14 million redevelopment, build, own and lease. Economic benefit to Richmond Valley was graded as high. Animal welfare was graded as high. And workplace health and safety was also graded as high. Council has been dealing with threats of legal action and ongoing assertions and allegations throughout the past couple of months. The attendees at the recent public meeting made it clear that they do not support Council's continued management of the facility. The current facility offers an incredible opportunity to the beef industry and the region. However, it is clear that it is not going to occur when there is constant challenge to Council as owner-manager of the facility. I want to acknowledge the commitment to the facility by the Council staff, to those who work there. They are capable, experienced, professional, progressive thinking people, and what I admire most about them is their pride in working in the cattle industry. And I've seen a number of them setting a great example to young people who might be considering a career in the industry. I want to close by saying that it is the elected body who makes the decisions of Council. Those of us sitting around the table, Councillor Cornish and the Mayor. It is then the General Manager who organises and implements those decisions. The decisions I make are my own, and I am grateful to the General Manager and staff who have diligently and efficiently carried out the direction of Council, as is their responsibility to the elected Council body. I would like to thank the General Manager for his report tonight. It is factual and I appreciate the amount of detail it contains. I support the General Manager's recommendation as printed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Deegan.
Yeah, I've just got, I guess, a list of questions for the General Manager.
Good.
And yeah, I'll probably kick off with just a couple of questions prompted by the speakers tonight. So just to get some clarification. So hopefully I don't misquote the speakers with these questions. Mr. Bailey indicated, or had some questions or comments on the deficit, operational deficit at the NRLX. whether that was accurate or not. Is the General Manager able to make any comments around that?
The figures Mr Bailey quoted were correct. The operational deficit and then the program deficit, which is around the 650 million. So no, Mr Bailey's presentation was accurate.
Okay. Yeah, with Mr Berry, I guess raised some questions or concerns around genuine consultation with the community, the users of the NRLX, and possibly council's unwillingness to negotiate during the EOI process. Are you able to comment on that?
Happy to comment on that. I think my report sets out very clearly the efforts that we have made to negotiate throughout this process, and the process started back in December, which led to licences being offered, further negotiations. Look at his detail in the report, but we've put a lot of time into discussions and providing responses. At one point, a 15-page document was provided with clarifications and changes. We have changed that licence agreement in response to a number of rounds of feedback. From the end of June, we have requested details around the delivery side and why the agents don't want that changed. We've also been asking for any details around the revenue policy. We've done that on a number of occasions. Since the community meeting, we've asked on a couple of occasions for a copy of the presentation so that we can consider the presentation that was provided at that meeting in some detail. And we have not received a copy of that either. So we have made genuine attempts to get into detail with the agents that have been provided the offer of a licence. So yes, we've been negotiating, and we haven't been getting much back. And I must say that, and I will say, it was surprising to see the statement today, and in some ways positive to see that the agents are willing to accept the 0.2%. But I will say that is the first time I have heard that at all. So maybe that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, thanks for those answers. Yeah, and I guess over the last couple of months there's been lots of rumours going around. I guess one that I keep hearing is around the staff that council have engaged at the NRLX to manage the cattle on sale days and so forth. There's been questions raised about their experience, qualifications, yeah, are you able to clarify around the team that's been put in place out there?
Yeah, happy to do that. Obviously, we've been planning this, and the operation was to commence from 1 July. So we had a team in place. Look, we've certainly heard the same thing about using a labour hire company that's based in Byron Bay called Spinifex. That's because they're a labour hire company that council's been using for some time, and other councils use as well. But just because they're based somewhere else doesn't mean that we're not employing local people. And this team that we have in place employs local people. Some have long experience in the cattle industry. We've also had some casual staff and employees that were working with the Agents Association have joined our casual workforce. So they're definitely got experience and are well placed. And I must say that I've been meeting regularly with this team. They're obviously going through a difficult period with uncertainty, but we are keeping them occupied. We're using their services and talents in other parts of our business, obviously, to reduce the cost burden on the NRLX while it's not operating. They're a good team, good people. I've been really pleased with how they've worked through this situation. So that's some feedback on that team. I've got full confidence that when the facility's ready to go, we have the people there to operate it in the short term, and then obviously depending on your decisions tonight as to what the long term means for those staff, but I've committed to supporting them in whichever way this proceeds.
Yeah, just a few more questions, and yeah, just I guess a little bit of due diligence in relation to recommendation number 4 tonight. Yeah, just to clarify a couple of things. So if, yeah, in terms to a lease agreement, what would that look like? How would a lease operate, and I guess what would the potential time frame like in terms of the time frame of a lease? What would that look like?
So obviously, you know, a lease is a detailed legal document that sets out both the business offer, the facility, how that needs to be managed. As the lessor, we can set standards and requirements. We'll need to work through that. We'll need to work through that quickly, but it also sets out, you know, who's responsible for what. And look, this is not new. There are leased facilities around, so we will tap into commercial advice within the industry to determine what is the best structure for a lease, what that offer is, and ultimately, you know, what's the best setup for council, its ratepayers, and the stakeholders that use this facility. As far as timeframes, look, it could be anywhere from 5 years to 30 years. But what we will do is get advice from people in the industry and structure that lease to the best advantage for, as I said, councils, ratepayers and the stakeholders.
Yeah, so what measures would be in place to, I guess, ensure that any agreement or potential lease agreement was in the best interests of the users of the NRLX and the ratepayers of the Richmond Valley?
So we need to get an independent valuation, obviously, of the facility. You know, we know that from an accounting perspective, it has a written down value of $28.5 million, but what that facility is worth on the market, we'd need to get a valuation so that we're informed about what that is, and then use that to determine what the lease arrangements and the best structure for that is. So we will work through that. We will continue to brief councillors on this matter, and where needed, we will obviously bring reports back to council to keep you all informed and make any required decisions, but also to keep the community informed.
Yeah, just 3 more questions if I've still got time. Yeah, if the recommendation is supported tonight by councillors, is there I guess a projected time frame on how long that process would take for a successful person taking on a lease to be able to commence operation?
Look, obviously we're keen to get things going as quickly as possible, so we will prioritise that. Look, I would expect that it could take up to 3 months from the time we go through a process of preparing lease documents, putting it out to market. You've got to have it out to market for a period of time, then you need to assess that, which certainly, as suggested in the report, would recommend that procurement process being managed by an independent group. So we seek appropriate bodies to do that for us. That we'd certainly be involved to ensure that the best interests of council and ratepayers is considered through that process.
Okay, yeah, you partly answered the next question around the procurement process. Yeah, being independent, so it would be managed by an independent body. What would council's, I guess, involvement in that process be?
Oh, look, we need to, be comfortable, and council, as the owner of the facility, needs to be comfortable with the terms of the lease. But we'd get someone to manage that procurement process. Look, we managed the EOI process with an independent, very credible independent member of that panel. We had probity advisors, and I suppose we've still faced questions about that. So in this instance, if we're going to go through tendering for a lease, I'd be getting independent group to manage the procurement process, do the assessment and then make a recommendation that would come back to council. Ultimately, councils are the one with the authority to make the decision, so that's how I'd see that happening.
Cool. Okay, and just one last question. Given we've come to the point that we are, where we really are at a stalemate in the negotiations and the path forward, what are the alternatives for leasing at this point, and are they feasible?
Alternatives, we've got the model that was in place last financial year, so council as the owner, a mixed model of council managing and agents and agent staff, so that's one model. You've got a lease model. There's obviously quite a number of sale yards that have that lease or privately owned. So I suppose the third option is sell the facility. So they're really your three, traditional options. There may be other variants of joint ventures that could be put together by willing parties, depending on what facilities are available and what region they're in.
Okay, thanks for that, and I'll let someone else have a go.
Thank you, councillor. Is there any other councillors? No?
Am I able to ask a question before I sum up?
You can ask a question.
Okay, thank you. Just based around Mr Bailey's comments, based around the projected reserve and how it projects out to, I think he was talking over 4 million, and look, I haven't got those figures in front of me. What that reserve, the way I understand it, anything that's got to be done out of there, it comes from that reserve. And if we've got to get to these sediment ponds in that time, that projects out to 4 million, what could that do to that reserve?
Look, the reserve's there to have a pool of funds available for the future maintenance, enhancement and capital investment in the facility. So the facility has a written down value of $28.5 million. So what that means is that in today's terms, it would cost around that to build that facility, as it is today. So you need to build up your reserves to fix things, or in 10, 15, 20 years' time, there may be a need for major maintenance. And so what we've been through in the past period, where we've relied on federal and state government funds and loans to fund it. The principles of how local government is heading, and that government wants us to get to, is that we have those the funds in reserves to invest in those renewals and new facilities. So that's what the accounting standards, and then they're not just local government, it's cross government. They're accounting standards that's what depreciation is about, putting the money to the side in reserves to fund future renewals. So if you have a reserve, that's got low amounts in it, you've got very little wriggle room when something goes wrong. We know that with the effluent ponds, again, that's a legacy of they've been used as effluent ponds since 1985. They need an overhaul. They need desludging. The banks need to be redone. They need to be lifted. The banks need to be lifted because they get inundated in floods, because times have changed. So it's over $5 million to fix that. We don't have those funds to do that. We're chasing grant funds to hopefully secure that, so that we can meet our requirements, which are in the pollution reduction program, which the EPA set, and we have to report on, and our next reporting is in December this year. So we need to be able to go back to them and say, here's what we're doing to fix this issue. And at the moment, our answer is we're chasing grant funds.
Thank you.
Any other councillors? I had a page of reading, but most of my comments have been taken by previous, or mentioned by previous councillors. So I'll just make two very short statements. I think this report is one of the best reports I've ever seen come to council on the NRLX. It's very in-depth, it's got a lot of history in it, and I've been reading these reports for a long, long time. It's self-explanatory and very informative. So I'll just, my last couple of statements are, at the community meeting, it was made quite clear by unanimous vote that council relinquish its management of the NRLX. I will be supporting the recommendation of the report as I feel it is the best outcome for the NRLX, all users, and most importantly, every Richmond Valley ratepayer and community member. Any other speakers? Councillor Hayes, right of reply.
Hey, thank you. I get to sum up. So, as the mover, tonight I've heard nothing from my fellow councillors that would make me vote against this recommendations. I've also heard nothing tonight from the presenters that are going to make me change my mind. I want to add the following points. We have advertised our revenue policy with the new fees and charges over a longer period than is required. The expressions of interest process resulted in the current agents putting in an application with little feedback or objection to the conditions of the proposed licence agreements. The offered agreements that have now lapsed were of industry standard that are needed to address workplace health and safety along with animal welfare standards as well as financial issues. Any concerned party or member of the public has had many opportunities to address council in that time, but we got nothing, we got next to nothing. All councillors were ready to accept phone calls, and I especially put my number on all correspondence. I received 2 phone calls in that time. Councillors met many times with agents for no result. How can we negotiate when the recipients of the licence agreements have gone public and stated that they are non-negotiable on many aspects of the agreements? They have also made it known that they no longer want council to be involved in the operation of the complex. It is time to move on from the current situation to get sales back at the NRLX, and this recommendation is the first step in the right direction in achieving the best outcome for our entire community. Everyone involved should be encouraging all interested parties to approach council to gain a licence to operate at the NRLX until a lessee is appointed. My opinion is that this is the only way that the sales can recommence soon. I would like to thank the gallery for attending tonight and anyone who may be viewing online for listening to the facts, and I fully support this recommendation. Thank you.
That closes the debate. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to page 24, 15.1, Richmond Valley Flood Study, post-exhibit. I've called that, so I'll move it. Could I get a seconder, please? Councillor Morrissey. Councillor, this item is a very, very important item for our community. It's the first time ever we have a flood study for the whole border of the majority of the Richmond River, the Richmond Valley. Usually, for those that are leaving, thank you for your attendance and have a safe trip home, please. Usually we have a hodgepodge lot of flood studies, and some of those over the years have not matched up from one line to another. So this is very, very important, and I might ask the General Manager to have a staff member to make a statement, please.
Yeah, I've just asked Director Jones to give us a snapshot of that one. Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. So this adoption, or hopefully adoption this evening, of the Richmond Valley Flood Study completes the first of 2 stages of the New South Wales Government's flood risk management process. There's a great little graph on page 25 in the council report that explains the journey that we're on. So we now have a modern, fit-for-purpose flood study that we can use to make informed strategic decisions to mitigate flood impacts and ensure that new developments and infrastructure are adequately protected and make no flooding worse. This study replaces a number of historic flood studies, as the Mayor has mentioned, It's an expanded model. It covers now around 86% of our floodplain. Our previous studies, our mixed match of studies, were about 52% of our floodplain. So it is a greatly expanded model. It's also incorporated climate change. In addition, the study has been calibrated with several significant flood events, including the 2022 floods. And it also considers floodplain terrain modifications, such as the Pacific Highway motorway. So following the adoption of this study, the design flood levels will be incorporated into Council's flood planning controls, and we will commence the next stages of the flood risk management process, being the flood risk management study and plan. So I think we're moving several leaps forward with the adoption of this study tonight, and we'll continue working on those risk management plans and the later stages.
Mr General Manager, I have a question. On page 27, there's about a third of the way up, there's a big paragraph, and the last sentence reads, "It is understood that there is a program of works in place to address the lack of gauges across the entire Richmond River catchment, which includes a proposal to increase river and rainfall gauging in the Bunga-Walbam catchment area." How long before they would be completed? Is there any idea? Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm actually on a working group, and we are meeting on Thursday of this week to discuss the next stages. So the idea is it's a Northern Rivers-wide catchment study with regards to flood gauges and their positions. So, and it's funded, it's looking at joint funding from both the state government and the federal government. To get those gauges in place and the systems in place, it won't happen overnight. It's probably about a 2-year process, but rest assured that we do have myself and other staff members fully engaged in that process, and we'll certainly be looking at advocating for our community and the Richmond Valley to ensure that we get our fair share of those flood gauges, and that system will benefit both council and the greater community.
Could you please take a message from this council to that working group that when they're installed, that they are regularly maintained? Because I know in the last flood there was a lot of gauges not working and misread. So if you could do that, please.
Certainly will, Mr Mayor. And just to add to that, currently flood gauges around New South Wales are owned and operated by numerous entities. That has been highlighted in the inquiries post the flood, that is a problem because of the governance and control. So one of the main aims of this project is to have one entity in control of the flood gauges, which will assist in that maintenance and continuity. So it's looking really positive for the future.
It's very important. Any other speakers?
Yeah,
Councillor Hayes.
Just a comment, like this study and the report and everything that comes out of it is great for our council, but I read in there too that it's going to be used by our adjoining councils when they're doing as part of their flood studies and their future documents. So I think it's great. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ballina will be very interested to downstream. Any other speakers? Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, I'll now move to 18, general business, and there is nil on page 45. So we flip over the page to 46, matters for information. Could I get a mover, please? Councillor Morrissey.
Second.
Councillor Humphries. Has any councillors got any questions on matters for information? Would like to make a statement? I think I've got one on 53, but I just can't recall what it was. Councillors, the letter from our local member, Mr Richie Williamson, about the casino courthouse. The second last paragraph, however, I remain concerned these works will most likely not see the casino courthouse fully operational by March 2024, as further capital will be required by the state for it to meet current standards so it can continue operating as a courthouse. The words that further capital concerns me. I think council really needs to monitor this and keep an eye on it, and work with our local member to make sure that the courthouse sooner than later does return to a functional courthouse, because it's just been too long. It's a big impost on our community. People having to travel to Lismore, a lot of those people that have to use that courthouse have not got transport, and I know also it has a big effect on our police, because if they're at the court, they can still be at their workplace and doing their duty, and be called when their matter comes up. But when they've got to go to Lismore, they're sitting all over there all day, taking them out of our community to keep now safe. So I think we really need to look at that. Any other councillors on matters for information? I'll put that motion then. All those... Sorry. I'm sorry. Councillor Deegan.
Yeah, no, I'd just comment on the same point. I guess the letter from the Attorney General doesn't really say much, and basically indicates it's acceptable that registry services are either conducted online or in Lismore. I don't know if there's any further, maybe with the local member, to get some sort of facility in town where those services can be provided, separate from the courthouse building, but still take away the need for people to have to travel to Lismore. Some people can't do that. Can't do it easily anyway.
Yeah. No, it's a big impost, but maybe we could talk to the local member to see if there's any scope for that. Yep. Any other items? I'll put that motion then. All those on page 46, sorry. Unanimous. Councillors, you now go to page 67, item 20, questions or noted. Do we have any questions, councillors?
Questions in writing for the next meeting, that's the next
Okay,
one.
no questions on notice. Sorry, Nil's there. 21 questions for the next meeting in writing.
Yeah, I have
Councillor
one.
Hayes.
I have one, and I'll just read it out. Can council further investigate the 15-tonne load limit on the Tatham bridges?
Yes, so I've got Director Zeller's just going to give an update on that issue verbally tonight.
Director Zeller.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The bridges in their current form were constructed in 1996. They're actually experiencing shrinkage of the girders, which is breaking and cracking the concrete on those bridges. So each time the flood happens, the damage gets worse. So we first engaged a specialist bridge company back in July 21 to do an inspection and analysis of both of those bridges. The recommendation stated that both bridges were nearing the end of their useful life, which at the time was a maximum of 10 years, and that the speed limit should be reduced to 80 k's. So that's when we got in and commenced planning on the design for the replacement of the bridges and trying to source the funds. So the weather event of 2022 happened, which again worsened the condition of both of those bridges. So we engaged another bridge specialist, more in an emergency sense, to reassess the bridges earlier this year. The condition of both of those bridges were rated the lowest you can possibly rate on a road condition asset, and it recommended single lane traffic and avoidance of the affected girders until an interim repair solution was undertaken. We invested about $380,000 to undertake that interim rehabilitation. That enabled the bridges to return to the 2 lanes of traffic, but the recommendation was still for the load limit of 15 tonnes. That was actually an explicit instruction in that report. The ultimate risk of reopening the bridges without the weight and speed limits is quoted in the reports as a catastrophic failure. The 15-tonne weight limit is a necessary measure to protect all of the road users. So the remedial work that we did, part of that was that it would be re-inspected in November of this year to check on the effect of that work. So I'm suggesting that's probably the best time to review the weight limit again. But in the short term, we've got some pretty solid reports that say that it's a big risk for us. So should also mention, in other reports, we noted the 18 million has been sourced to replace those two bridges, so that work is underway.
I'll just comment on why I lodged the question tonight. I've been asked by a few cane truck drivers and they've spoken in length to me about how the load limit on that being 15 when they can drive an empty truck that weighs between 17 and 18 tonne. So it's close, it's not that far over that limit. And their assumption was that if they could go over that bridge empty but go the long way around full, it'd halve their time, save the cane growers some money. And I asked the question for that reason and that reason only.
Director Zeller said, you said that they'll be assessed again soon, that could be looked at?
Yeah, so as part of the work that we did to get it back to two lanes, part of that follow-up is an inspection in November to say that that's working how it was expected to. So
that question could be asked then?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just add, just because it's relevant for cane growers, that we are in and sort of re-engaged in discussions with Lismore about the Broadwater Bridge. We've obviously got detailed designs and estimates done for that. Again, we just need to find a funding source. It's a shared asset, so it's 50-50, but we're sort of working with them to try and find the right fund to get some cash to fix that one as well, because I know that's affecting both cane growers but others in that Broadwater vicinity.
Just a question around that. Is it flood affected that bridge? I know it was out before the flood, but did the flood do any more damage? So it doesn't qualify for Reconstruction Commission money?
No, it doesn't.
Other questions? All right, we now move on to page 68. Matters referred to closed council. I need a motion to go into closed council. Councillor Morrissey, seconder. Councillor McGillan. Mr. General Manager, has been any written representation made regarding this meeting going into closed council?
No, nothing received, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any verbal representations from the members of the public? Thank you everyone for your attendance. I'm sorry?
How do we go about submitting a question for council? Do we have to submit that in writing to the councillors prior, or?
I'll just get Julie to get your number. She can give you a call tomorrow and explain all the options for engaging with council. It's probably the best way to do that.
Thank you everyone for your attendance. Thank you. General Manager, could you please ask someone to read the resolutions of closed council, please?
I'll hand, I'll hand it over to Director Zola and Jones to take it away. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So in relation to item 22.1, Water and Sewer Project Delivery Services Panel, the recommendation reads that Council 1 appoints all respondents to the Water and Sewer Project Delivery Services tender to the panel of suppliers, taking into account the comments noted by the assessment panel in the report. 2, appoint Humanex Proprietary Limited as the lead project management consultant to assist Council in the delivery of the casino STP replacement project. And 3, authorises the General Manager to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of Council where necessary.
Thank you.
In the item 22.2, Tender VP 374503, Old Casino Station Landscape and Construction Works, recommend that 1, declines all tenders for Tender VP 374503, Old Casino Station Landscape and Construction Works, due to all tenders being more than Council's available budget. 2, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of Council where necessary. And 3, notes the outcomes of the negotiations to be reported to Council for information at a future meeting. In the item 22.3, Tender VP 368772, Design and Construct Casino to Bentley Rail Trail Bridges, recommend that 1, Council accepts the tender from Frontier Assembly Proprietary Limited, which represents the best value for Council at $1,579,365, exclusive of GST. And 2, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of Council where necessary.
In the item 22.4, Tender VP 366581, Rehabilitation of Sewer Mains, the recommendation reads that 1, Council accepts the assessed tender price from in situ form, which represents the best value for Council at $1,037,530.09, exclusive of GST. And 2, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report and the available budget, and affixing the seal of Council where necessary.
In the item 22.5, Tender VP 291058, Design and Construct Nortons Gap Road Landslip Reconstruction, recommend that 1, Council accepts the tender from Civil Mining and Construction Proprietary Limited, which represents the best value for Council at $9,932,342.10, exclusive of GST. And 2, the General Manager be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms and conditions of any contract or agreement in line with the content of this report, and affixing the seal of Council where necessary, and seek concurrence with Transport for New South Wales for the available budget.
Thank you. Councillors, I'd like to thank you for your attendance, and staff, and the gallery has gone. So, and for those out there viewing our council meeting, thank you for watching. It hasn't been an easy meeting, but a hard decision had to be made. So thanks again, and I'll now close the meeting. Thank you.